So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Today we are starting our fourth session of this 12-week Bhagavad Gita Happiness Project through Bhagavad Gita. And today we'll be talking about karma, destiny, free will, and its connection to our happiness.
Most of the times, right, we find ourselves stumped by our destiny, by our karma, and we say that the cards that I've been dealt with are no good. So how can I be happy in life with these kind of cards? So that's what we're going to talk about. How much of our happiness is predestined? How much of it can be changed? How much of it is also dependent on our response? So let's look at the topics we're going to cover today.
So today, karma, this is an invisible force that some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it, some people find it very abstract. But karma is, as according to Bhagavad Gita, it's a real force that is affecting our lives, especially our happiness. And by understanding karma properly, we can take charge of our happiness. We become responsible and take charge. Without understanding it, it's just we get tossed around by it.
Actually,
we get scared by it, or we fight it, and sometimes we give in. So we don't have to do either of those.
So one of the five topics of principal topics of Bhagavad Gita is karma. So it's a very significant topic. And then the second thing that we're going to cover today is walking into the karma Costco. So for those of us who are from US, we know about Costco. It's like this giant warehouse where you can go and get pretty much anything. So there is also a karma Costco. So it depends on when you go, what kind of karma. So there are different kinds of karma. And you'll be surprised to see all the different kinds of karma that's actually acting upon. Let's get into the third
Without
one.
understanding karma, we often wonder, why do bad things happen to good people? Everybody thinks that they are good people, and of course everybody is good at the core, being the soul. But then we see so many bad things without our desired things are happening to us that we have no control over. So what is the force behind that? We'll explore that.
The number three. Yeah, we're going to talk about, this is a $1 million question that we get asked. I think one of the questions that we get asked the most, which is it all destiny? And if it is all destiny, then do I even have to do anything? Am I just completely driven by destiny, or do I have a free will? So we'll talk about that. That do I have a control over my happiness, or am I just predestined to be miserable? Number four.
And then of course we want a way out. So this is our acronym for this session: GRAPE, your way out of karma. So means it doesn't have to be painful. It can be as sweet as a grape.
So let's continue. So this was actually a Jewish rabbi. His name is Harold Kushner, and he had a son or a daughter who had progeria, which is where the child actually keeps growing. He's growing older, right?
Age of like 10, the child becomes like 60-year-old. The body becomes like 60-year-old.
So, and he was a very devout man. He was a very devout man, very good man. And so he could not really understand why something so bad as this was happening to him. So he came up with like three different scenarios. He said, either God is good. He said there were three things he came up with. He said, one, that we have no control over. God has no control over. God is all powerful. God is good. God does not have.
God is all merciful. God is all powerful. God is all merciful. And the third is, he said, okay, let's see. I've devoted my life to God, but I'm still getting so many bad reactions. I'm not happy. My son is not happy. So what went wrong? So he said, okay, I'm a good person. Bad things happening to me. So which means either God is omniscient or God is all powerful. So he said, okay, God is all powerful. And then the second was God is, right?
No, so what he did was he said, God is all powerful, God is all good, and God is omnipotent. So he said, out of these three, he said, I have to accept that God is all good. That premise I cannot challenge. So now if God is all good, then the only other answer to this question of suffering is that he is not omnipotent and he does not have control over human suffering. So that means that he's powerless to prevent human suffering. So that
Hmm.
was his thesis after he looked at this question in great detail.
Right. God is all omniscient, God is all merciful, but he's not all powerful. He cannot stop human suffering. So this is an interesting take on that how our Vedas, they talk about, without understanding this concept of karma, we often have these questions about life, the questions about God. And so in this song, this very famous song, it says that the life keeps on moving. And this is a song by Kabir, actually. He says, between the two stones of karma, no one is spared. The millstone of life goes on moving. Kabir observes, he who holds the anchor of his name will always remain unhurt. So just a take on karma and how to kind of escape the two chapkis or stones of karma. So this concept of karma, as you will see, is very widespread in all our Vedic literature. And this is the same thing that happened to Charles Darwin. When trouble comes, then the first thing, or many times for many people, the first thing that goes is their faith in God. And this is what happened to Charles Darwin. He was a very devout Christian, and he had a daughter, and his daughter suddenly became afflicted with cholera. I guess that was very common during those days. And she died at a very young age. And as a result, Darwin was very disturbed and he questioned his faith in God. And eventually he could not sustain it. So he lost his faith in God because of this incident, this calamity. And and when he was publishing his wife still remained very faithful. And when he was finally came up with the theory of evolution, and he was going to publish his evolution of species, his wife really questioned him, and she really requested him not to publish this this theory because it was not, first of all, not sound. It was just a theory, and it would violate her faith in God. And but Darwin had lost all faith, so therefore he just went ahead and published this theory.
What he did was that he went to the pastor and he asked this question, that why did my daughter, who was so innocent and at such a young age, why did she have to die? So the pastor could not give an answer. And because of that, he said, you don't have an answer, so there cannot be a God. So what we are getting at is this question of evil and suffering in the world is something that we're not able to wrap our head around. And as a result, when we don't understand how karma works, then very quickly we become disillusioned and we become very hopeless. And we just, we start believing that there's actually no one in control.
Or God is very cruel. Like if somebody, especially when we have somebody has a young child or somebody very dear to them dies, and sometimes in great pain, then the first thing people have is a lot of anger towards God. That God is very cruel, God is not merciful, he doesn't care about me, so why should I care about him? So therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that one should understand this concept of karma. He says, Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopi atra mohita tatte karma pravakshami yad gyatva mokshashaya shubhat. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 16th verse. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Karmano hi apya bodhabhyam bodhabhyam cha vikarmana akarmanascha bodhabhyam gahana karmano gati. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. So he says this topic of karma is actually very complex, and no one can fully understand how karma is acting in our life. But you can still understand a lot of basic things about this concept of karma, and that will help us to navigate this world in a very responsible manner. Because just like when we go into a city or a town or a country, if we don't know the laws of that country, then we can run into trouble very, very quickly. Or if we don't care about the laws of that country, we can run into trouble very, very quickly. But if we know the laws, we may not know all the laws of the country. But if we know the basic laws of the country, how to be a responsible citizen, then we can have a very comfortable, happy life. So similarly, the laws of the universe, karma is actually described as a fundamental law of this universe, which is
just like gravity, right? Just like
like gravity. It's a fundamental law No one can escape. No one can escape gravity. And similarly, no one can escape this law of karma. And therefore, when we know about it, then we can be responsible citizens and then have a happy, comfortable life as much as we can.
So we can continue.
So we'll come back to
Let's come back to these.
Yeah, so Arjuna also asked these questions in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Aksharam Brahma Parama Sabhav Adhyatma Uchyate Bhuta Bhava Udbhav Karo Visarga Karma Sangita. Krishna describes, the verse number is wrong, I apologize for that, it's in the 8th chapter. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said the indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman and his eternal nature is called Dhyatma. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma. So whatever action we perform, this is one very technical definition given by Krishna, that all the actions that lead to development of a body is called karma. So we'll get into what karma is. So we all know what karma is in a sense. We have a sense. Basically, karma means for every action there is a reaction. There is a proportionate reaction to every action that we do. We may or may not see the reaction, but it follows us like the shadow.
We may or may not even see the action that we may have done.
We may not even see the reaction.
All we see is the So you want to just share?
Yeah, it all comes back to you. Karma means it all comes back to you. So you're not hearing the sound?
We are.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, Krishna is describing these three basic types of categories of karma. And it may kind of surprise us that there are three primary kinds of karma. One is called karma, other is called vikarma, and then the last one is called akarma. So go ahead.
So karma, it's a word that is typically just used in a very generic way. But when we say karma, technically it means that action which is in accordance with the ancient scriptures, and which are actually good, which are meant for the well-being of oneself or well-being of others. So for example, karma would generally refer to someone feeding the poor, giving money in charity, opening wells, all the kind of good stuff that we do in this world so that we can have some good reaction later. That's karma. And
it's basically abiding by the laws of the universe.
Yeah, abiding by the
material good life.
Material good life. And vikarma means anything that is going to cause self-harm. So any kind of intoxication, addictions, harming the bodies of another human being, killing someone, telling a lie. I mean, all of these things, right? Anything that is against our own. So it's very interesting. The word sin, for example, typically people think, oh, this is just, being boxed into this morality. But the word sin comes from the German root, and it means asunder. Asunder means something that breaks apart. So yoga means to connect. Asunder means to break things apart. So anything that disconnects us from our inner self, from God, that is called vikarma.
And then there's a very interesting concept called akarma, which is translated as inaction. So this is a kind of an action which frees us from the action of karma. So karma is some reaction to some action that we did. And then we'll talk about it, why it is necessary to free ourselves from karma. Because as long as there is a karmic bank balance, we have to take a material body in this world again, in some kind of body. It could be human body, it could be animal body, it could be a plant body. The soul is not free. So the karma, you can think of it as like a chain. We have created so many millions of chains that is binding the soul to this material world. So how do we get free? And then Krishna talks about this concept of akarma. We'll explore a little bit more about it, but just to introduce these three types of karma. Go ahead.
This is a very interesting idea. Instant and delayed karma. So instant karma is that, say I come and I slap a person, right? And then what happens? The person will just slap me back. Or say I go and I have some pani puris on the street, and then the next morning I get a stomach ache or a stomach loose motion. That's instant karma. I did something, immediately I got the reaction. I can trace the cause. Delayed karma, on the other hand, is karma where the action was performed a long, long, long time ago. We may have even forgotten it, but the reaction has come after a long time, and then we get really confused, like, what happened? I didn't do anything. Case in point is a story of Dhritarashtra from Mahabharata. So Dhritarashtra, all his 100 sons died. So he asked this question, he was very upset, and he asked Krishna this question. It's like, what happened? That I didn't do anything wrong. So then Krishna told Dhritarashtra that actually 100 lifetimes ago, he was a boy who climbed on a tree, and there was a nest with 100 little baby birds, and there was a mother and a father, and he poked their eyes and he burned all those 100 baby birds alive. And so that's why his 100 sons died. So he said, okay, well and good, but then why did I have to wait for 100 lifetimes in order to get my reaction? So he said, because you had to wait for 100 lifetimes so that you could accumulate enough pious credits to have 100 children. And then once you had those 100 children, then the reaction for that past sinful activity was given to you. So this is how complex karma. You can almost imagine, like sometimes, this happens. You sit with a box of yarn, and I don't know if you've ever done that. Like the yarn is all tangled together. You can't find the end of a yarn, like a ball of yarn, right? You're trying to figure out how to unentangle that. That's how karma, that's how complex karma is. Go
And
ahead.
therefore, because of delayed karma, we don't really see our actions, and we kind of become oblivious that, oh, I did something, and because many times people seem to get away with doing something wrong, right? And they think, oh, there's nobody watching, I can do whatever I want. Or what happens is when we get some bad reaction, then we start thinking, I didn't do anything wrong. Why am I getting this bad reaction? Maybe it's all random. Maybe God is not fair. Or maybe the other people are the cause of my problems, right? We blame somebody else. We never take responsibility. And then there is a logic behind delayed karma. We will talk about that. But the thing is that when we perform an action, after that, we don't have a control when the reaction is going to come. Krishna is a super soul. He decides when to release that reaction upon us. But it is waiting. It's not going away. It's going to come at its own time, and Krishna decides. But that is called delayed karma. And a classic example of that is a silo in a farm. For example, a farmer, he's producing crops, and he deposits the crop, the harvested crop at the top, and he takes out from the bottom whatever is at the bottom. So like this is a pipeline. So for say last year, he had a bad crop which went to the bottom of the silo. This year he has a good crop, which means he's a good guy. He has been a good guy this year, and he's putting all the good crop at the top. But when he's taking out, what's coming out from the bottom is the bad crop. So he's saying, I put in good crop, but what is coming out is a bad harvest. So if he doesn't understand, then he will be kind of, or maybe his children, they didn't really see his daddy putting the bad crop last year. So daddy, this year you had a good crop. Why is the bad crop coming out? So that's we don't understand this delayed karma, and that's why we always get confused.
And actually, the other scenario that happens a lot is that you look at the neighbor's crop that he's getting out, and it's like, this guy, he had such a bad crop. Why is he getting a good crop? And this happens all the time, right? We see people around us, our neighbors, and they're just nasty people. And you look at them and you go like, they do nothing right, but they seem to have a good harvest. They seem to be doing pretty well. So we can understand that they're just, it's a phase. The good, they're taking care. I mean, they're harvesting the good crop, basically.
So this is another concept called collective karma. So we all have individual karma. This is important to understand, that every soul's karma is individual, but yet we are individually responsible for enjoying or suffering the reactions of our own karma. But sometimes what nature does, there's a concept called collective karma. So it will collect people with similar karma together, and it will give out that result to them to get good or bad. So in this example, you see a bad result, like the ship sinking or some hurricane or some natural disaster, so many people together suffering the reaction of that. Or so many people enjoying some good karma together, right? A family or a society or a nation really going through, like Romans, they enjoyed good karma for quite some time, and then suddenly the whole empire just was destroyed. And then the Greeks, and then so you see this collective karma working in so many different ways, at the family level, at the society level, at the country level. And so it's a collective, the forces of nature bring such people together with the same karma and gives out a certain result to them.
And actually, sometimes when you have one family member in our family, extended or immediate, who, they're causing so much trouble to us, actually, that is what is collective karma. There's one person, he comes and you think, what's going on? Like, he's causing grief to all the family members, but actually that's collective. But it's the reason why I'm a part of the collective karma is because there's my own individual karma included in that.
Right. So nobody can take away our karma. So you can't say, well, I'll my children or my husband or my wife, can they share my karma? Or will I share can I share their karma? No, we cannot really give away our karma. It's not like a bank account you can withdraw and deposit into somebody else's account. We have to, we carry our own karma, but we may enjoy or suffer it together with others. Go ahead. You remember the story better.
Oh my God. Okay. Jyoti remember even better. So there is the story of this man who was told that he was going to be, he had an appointment with death. And so he wanted to run away from that. And then he goes off to this other town. I think it's the name of the town is Samara. And he's wandering in the town. And then all of a sudden, he thinks he sees death. And so then he rushes back to his original town, and then he meets Death there. And so so Death basically says, I thought I had an appointment with him in Samara. I think he runs away from Samara. And then when he sees Death, then he runs back. And then actually that's where he was supposed to meet Death. So the point is that we can run anywhere we want, but karma will catch up with us. Just like there is a very nice example given in Srimad Bhagavatam, that just like there might be so many cows who are gathered in a field, but that one calf, can actually wander around in that whole field, and she can find her own mother. So in the same way, there can be so many people, we can all be assembled together in a group of, 100,000 people in a field, but our particular karma will actually wander, and it'll come and it'll find us wherever we are.
And the reason for that is everything that we do, every action that we do is being noticed and recorded. First of all, by the super soul who's sitting in the heart, he's observing every single thing that we are doing, and super soul never forgets. And it's also said in Bhagavad Purana that all the stars and the sun and the moon, the directions, they are all observing all our actions. So it's not a unconscious universe. Everything is being recorded. Just like a citizen, now everything is being recorded, especially with the internet. Everybody knows what we are doing. But the laws of nature are very subtle and very firm. And so therefore, there's no escape. We cannot say, oh, I'll hide this, or I can get away with this. If we try to escape our karma in one way, it will catch up with us in another way. So for example, we try to avoid one kind of suffering and say, okay, now I took care of it. But that suffering, if it was meant for us, it will come back to us in some other way. For example, somebody say, oh, I'll become very rich, and then all my troubles will be taken care of, right? I have enough power and money to take care of all my karma. But no, that karma that was meant for us, it will come and catch us in the form of disease, in the form of some other problem that we are, so we can't avoid it.
So also saying that ignorance is no way for anyone to come out. Like, so suppose you're driving, like say you go to the US or some other country, and there's a particular speed limit, or there's a particular side of the road you're supposed to drive on. And suppose the police, catches you, and, he says, hey, you were on the wrong side. You say, I didn't know. Well, that's not reason enough. So ignorance does not excuse us. So we have to, so it behooves us to really know, what are the things that are, what is karma, what is vikarma, and ultimately how to be free of all, both good and bad karma. So we'll talk about that.
Especially we had an experience in Europe, quite a few experiences in Europe. If you go traveling there, they're very smart, especially in countries like Italy and all that. They have these like hidden speed limits, and you're driving on the highway. And after we came back to the US, we got like 2 or 3 speeding tickets and 2 or 3 wrong parking tickets. And I said, what happened there? and they were like, you parked in this wrong place, you drove to this area like 10 kilometers over the speed limit, and you hardly see that anywhere. But our saying that we didn't know, we could not get rid of those tickets. We had to basically pay. So it's like that. We have to know beforehand.
So this
So
is
this
the
is
most,
yeah,
go ahead.
This
So
is-
somebody could, yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead.
So this is actually the most amazing thing that, somebody might say, oh, if I have some good karma, if I have some bad karma, I'm just going to go ahead and just engage in some good karma. And then that's going to just be like, negate each other. And then I'm going to have a zero. I'll get a zero at the end. I'll negate each other, cancel each other out. It doesn't happen that way. One has to, so for good karma, so the result of good karma is beautiful body, education, good birth, money, power. These are all the effects of good karma, and bad karma, of course, we know. So just by engaging in good karma, so whatever good karma we have to experience the happiness or the joy of that. Whatever bad we have to experience the suffering. We can't negate each other.
Now, what this does is that, like sometimes people say, well, I'll engage in all sorts of bad activities, and then I will do some positive things to balance it out. We cannot do that, because what happens is, what nature does for good activities, for good karma, also we have to take birth in a material body. To suffer our bad karma, also we have to take birth in a material body. So the result of karma is basically all bad. Because it's all bad, because we have to be born again into a material body. It could be a human body, it could be an animal body, some other kind of body. Of course, the principles of karma only apply to the human body. Once we go down into the cycle of the animal body or insect body or plant body, the laws of karma don't apply. At that point, we are just suffering the reactions of our bad karma, because those species are very, very painful. Only when we come to the human form, then we have a conscious, our intelligence is more developed. We can make conscious decisions of right or wrong. That's when the laws of karma start applying. So as long as we have a body, which is a result of karma, that's what Krishna says, Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Karo Visarga Karma Sangita. That actions that produce to a material body, that is defined as karma. So as long as we have a body, it's a bad bargain. Every material body is a bad bargain, because in that body, we'll again do some good and bad karma, and therefore the cycle never ends. We can never come out. But in the human body, there's an exit. So we'll talk about that at the end.
Also, because good karma to become bad is very, very easy. Like let's use an example. Like suppose because of good karma, somebody takes birth in a very rich family, and you see that, right? But then once they take birth in a rich family, then sometimes they engage in very, very sinful activity. So now they're accumulating bad karma. So good and bad in this material world, they're like two sides of the same coin. So one comes with the other. Here is another. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
the cow dung patties. So there was a pile of cow dung patty which was all wet, and there was a pile of this cow dung patties there's a pile of cow dung which was wet. It's like in a big poop pile. And then these patties, you especially see them in Indian villages. They make these patties, dry them up, and they're ready to be fired. So it's like the wet. Manjari, you can mute yourself. The wet. Okay. So the wet cow dung is making fun of the dry cow dung patties, saying that, oh, you're going to be burned soon. Your time is up. And the dry cow dung patty is calling the wet powder. Well, it's your turn next. Very soon you will be kind of turned into a dry patty. And then in Indian villages, they use them as firewood for cooking and things like that. And it's very good for cooking. But the point is that wet or dry, the end is the same. Similarly, good karma or bad karma, the end is the same. It's a bad bargain in the end. So yeah, go ahead. It's karma circle.
No, let's go ahead.
So I'm not going to play it, but it's like the karma circle. You can see this, how they're trying to go up and down, but they eventually come down, right? So going up and down in this karma cycle, we may get a higher birth, we may get a lower birth, but ultimately we keep rotating in this circle, and it's zero-sum game basically. And this is, yeah, we can skip this. Like the shoots and ladder game basically is on the concept of karma only. You go up a ladder, that's good karma. You come down a snake, that's bad karma. So
Oh,
maybe we
this-
can take a pause here and get
Yeah,
some,
yeah, let's take a pause.
and
But
then
this,
we'll go into this.
yeah, this is one of the most amazing things that will actually, when I first saw this graph, it completely changed my understanding of why I have certain proclivities. So we'll get into the, but before that, maybe we can take a pause and see if you guys have any comments or questions. So a comment would be something that you heard that you may want to share it with the rest of the group. It's a good exercise. It helps us solidify what we have heard. So please go ahead. We just like to get maybe 3 or 4 reflections. Yeah, go ahead.
Even if you think it's obvious, please say it, because that reinforces.
Yes, Jyoti, go ahead.
I have a question.
Okay.
I was just wondering, is there a way to dodge karma? I mean, do something to mitigate its effect?
You are ahead of the game. Yes, we're getting to that. That's
All
our
right.
next.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Yes, Amitabh.
No, I'm thinking, why the hell do we get into this cycle of karma in the first place? I mean, this play of soul getting a body and then getting into this cycle.
Yeah, that's
What's
a
the
very good
tipping
question,
point for
Amitabh.
that?
Yeah, that's we'll talk about that in our I think in our 6th session, which is the material world. Why do we come to this place in the first place? To get into the cycle. And it's basically misusing our free will. Every soul has a minute free will, which basically helps us to decide whether we want to stay connected with God and enjoy with God, or we want to run our own ship. And at some point, the soul decides, some souls decide, not everybody is foolish like us. Some souls decide that enough of that. I want to be my own captain. I want to be my own boss. I don't need God. And then that's when Krishna grudgingly allows the living entity to come to this material world where everybody can try to be their own boss and pretend. It's like being in a play kitchen. And that's when the whole cycle of karma starts. So another purpose of the karma concept is to allow us to face the reactions of our choices, because in this material world everybody is trying to be God. So how can that happen? So this framework of karma allows us to do that, experience being the master and then facing the reactions to that. So at some point the soul realizes that this is too much, I don't want this. And so therefore the law of karma is also kind of a subtle educative process. It is not just a way to punish us, but it is a way to also help us educate.
Also, like I think to your question that why even get into it in the first place, it's interesting, like you said, because we have some freedom, and the soul wants to exercise that freedom and wants to experience what would it be like to enjoy matter. So we have, because I think and we'll talk about this in our future session. We are sort of marginal in nature, which means that we have the freedom to either be under the control of matter or be under the control of spiritual energy. So we choose, for whatever reason, we choose to be under the control of material energy, and we keep getting frustrated. And the law of karma just is like it's like a universal justice system that allows people to make choices. They're free to make those choices, but then they also have to deal with the consequences. So
I have a question quickly.
yes.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel like this. Yes, I do believe in the law of karma, but I feel like when we start thinking about karma going from one to many lifetimes, then we can become complacent, because whatever is happening, we feel, acha, in our last life kuch kiya hoga, that's why it's happening. Or, but I feel like if I mean, I'm talking about myself, but if I feel like, oh, whatever I'm doing, I have to pay for it in this lifetime, and I'll have to, so I better be good and they say the right things and do the right things, then I feel then I tend to be less what is the word for it, sometimes you can be too like fatalist or whatever, where you tend to leave things on fate, that, oh, this is because of so what are your thoughts on that?
It's a great, thank you, Manjari. I think that's really, really great. Yes, the whole process or the discussion on karma people can swing one way or the other, right? There are two ways that people tend to swing. One is that if everything is predestined, why bother? The other is, which is basically, having this sort of fatalistic mindset. The other is, blaming mindset, that if you're suffering, it is your fault. Right. So, the point is that karma is not just like, okay, what happened in the past, and so now I'm helpless, or like you're saying that, it may happen in some other lifetime, so I'm not going to take responsibility for my life. It's actually just the opposite. So we'll talk about free will, destiny, karma, how the three intersect, and ultimately what is the response to anything that happens in our life. That determines the next set of reactions for us. So when we understand this, this is why I think karma is one concept that has been highly misused.
Hmm.
And so,
we living entities have a tendency to procrastinate because of the laws of ignorance. And what happens is, what to speak of, like if I will get the reaction next life, even if I get the reaction tomorrow, we have a tendency to not care. Unless and until I get the reaction right away, we don't care about what's coming in the future, right?
Hmm.
If it's going to come 5 years from now, we said, oh, okay, 5 saal baad dekhenge. Who cares about it, right? That is the nature of a conditioned mind. So, but what the thing is that the later the reaction comes, this is another very interesting thing about karma. The later the reaction comes, the bigger it will be. So the compounding interest, the compounding on karma is very heavy. So it's better to get rid of the reaction as soon as possible. If you wait another lifetime or 2 lifetimes or 10 lifetimes, the compounding will make it much, much bigger. So better to clear the account as fast as possible.
And who keeps all these accounts?
Krishna is a
So-
super soul.
There is
Yes. Nothing
Right.
escapes him.
actually in the
So
first verse,
There is a theory about some other god entity called Dharmraj or something.
Dharmraj is just an assistant. He's an assistant to Krishna.
There is a super soul within. And, there is a very nice verse in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam that says that, that supreme person is fully conscious of everything that is happening, both directly and indirectly. So everything is, we don't realize that we live in a very conscious world. We ourselves as conscious, and there is intelligence and consciousness, which is pervading this entire universe. And that person is seated within, is also outside. He's all pervasive as well. So
Thank
maybe, yeah.
That's what was my reflection too when you talked about collective karma. I always believed in that example we can take of the war that's going on right now, and so many people suffering. And then you wonder, there may be good karmas, bad karmas. Why are good karma people are suffering? It is the collective thing. What just puts me in awe is like the algorithm of the Lord is like millions
It is,
upon
right?
millions of souls and karmas. How
So
to
big a-
gather them together, and
So big as the Titanic, right?
And Krishna is like 100 steps ahead of what's going to happen. He already knows kind of, okay, based on our karma of every individual, he has to arrange for a certain soul to meet another soul, and they have to go through the karma together. And then not only in this life, he's already planned like 10 lifetimes ahead. I don't know how many lifetimes he has planned. Yeah, so there is no, we can't even comprehend the complexity of this whole algorithm. And therefore, Krishna says even Brahma, he cannot understand this algorithm. So you don't even worry about it.
So let's start now. I think otherwise we won't be able to complete our. So this next thing that we are going to talk about is one of my favorite slides, and I think hopefully this will be yours too. It'll make a lot of sense. A lot of things will become clear through this. Go ahead. You want to explain?
So the fundamental law here is that, as Amitabh was asking, why do we get into this karma cycle? So the root cause of this karma cycle is avidya, or ignorance. Ignorance of us being a spirit soul. We get into this ignorance that I am this body, I am this mind, and I should enjoy this body and mind to the fullest. And that is called ignorance. We become ignorant about our connection with God or Krishna, and then we start thinking that I am free. There's nobody controlling me because I don't see anybody controlling me. I am free to do whatever I want to do. So that is called ignorance. So this ignorance then produces in the heart or the mind called bija, or sinful desire, or a pious desire. In this graph, we are showing just negative, but you can also replace this with positive or pious desire. So sinful desire means something that is taking me away from my spiritual self, taking me away from God. It's called the bija, the desire to enjoy matter, basically, in some way.
I was actually
To exploit
thinking of
matter.
I was just thinking of the chariot example. In that case, where the soul goes in a state of slumber, then all the horses, they develop this kind of, desire to go and try and enjoy in all different directions, right? That's the sinful desire. And then from that sinful desire, what happens? As soon as we contemplate, as soon as a desire comes within our consciousness, we want to act upon it. And if you remember, when we talked about the mind, we talked about 3 functions of the mind: thinking, feeling, and willing. So at this stage, the desire stage, it's the feeling stage, right? And then the next stage is the willing. Willing means now I want to act upon that. So that's called papam, which means sinful action, which we defined as any action that separates us from our true self. That's papa.
So it's not a religious concept, because many times people think that punya and pap, this is all like religious stuff. But no, I mean, just like in any state, you have actions which are prohibited. And if you commit them, that's a criminal activity, you will be punished. So similarly, there are laws of this universe. Anybody violates them, they will be punished for that action. So that is called sinful action. So now once the action is committed, then then there is some reaction accrues from that action. So that initially that reaction is unmanifested, right? Because, for example, if somebody goes and steals something, they don't get immediately punished, right? They have to go through the first they have to be caught, and they have to try it in court, and then they will be sent to a prison if they have committed the act. So initially every reaction is unmanifest, or it hasn't come to light yet. So therefore it's called aprarabdha. Prarabdha means manifest, aprarabdha means non-manifest. So initially the reaction is non-manifest.
That's
that non-manifest reaction is going to give 2 kinds of it's going to fructify in 2 different ways. Like it's like a flow chart. It goes into 2 ways. So the first way it goes is prarabdha, which means it will, like the thief getting caught. That is called prarabdha, manifest reaction, and he will be punished, and there will be some suffering. So that is the chart, that is the flow that is going downwards in this graph. It is called prarabdha.
What is really interesting is what happens within the psyche. So what happens within the psyche is called kutam. Kutam means that when you engage in the act of thievery, then one reaction is that you'll get caught and you'll be put in jail. That's the easier reaction. The more difficult reaction is that within the heart, there will be deposited a proclivity to want to engage in that activity again. And so the cycle just continues. So that seed that is deposited within the heart, that desire to want to do that over and over again, is actually what forms the basis of all addictions. And we sometimes wonder, why is it that people know that I should not be doing this, but I'm caught in it and I keep repeating the same action over and over again? It's because of this deposit of these sinful dispositions. So now within our heart, there are countless such bijas or countless such kutams, that are waiting to be fructified, and which actually is going to generate the next set of bodies in the future for us.
So yeah, so as you said, we have these, the prarabdha is already manifest. So our body is described that our body, material body, is also prarabdha. It's a reaction of some previous activities that we did. It's a reaction to our karma. It is already manifest. Now in this body, in due course of time, there will be some diseases, there will be some setbacks in our life, some financial trouble or some family trouble or this or that, or some good results we will see, some prosperity, some whatever. So that is all. Once it comes, then it is called prarabdha. Until it comes, it is called aprarabdha. And then we are also, within our heart, we are harboring this kutam, which means disposition to do certain material things. And then the desire means like you're committed to it and then you want to do it. And that translates into material action. So which can again produce good or bad reaction for us. But the thing is, it continues the cycle.
We can also see that when we have children, every child comes in with a certain disposition. So that's like the seeds, right? That we also technically, sometimes we use the word samskaras. So those sinful disposition or whatever disposition we have, they are all being taken, they move from one body to the next body, and we carry this deposit.
Anybody has any question on this? Is the most important slide of today's presentation. So if anybody has any question or if you haven't understood anything, please go ahead.
How we come to know that we have dispositions, whether it is sinful or
How do we know? Yeah, that's a very good question. Dispositions, it's like a force within us, and our heart will be attracted to doing certain things, right? We want to do certain things, and that's where the disposition will take us. The disposition will very quickly turn into a desire, and that's when we know actually. So based on our desires, then we can know I have these kind of dispositions, and then we can take care of them. Yeah, we only see tip of the iceberg, but then there must be a lot more inside me. We cannot know all of our dispositions because a lot of them are hidden within the heart. We only know about them in the surface into a desire.
Actually, most of the times what people try to do is they try to mitigate this sinful reaction, right? The prarabdha, so some suffering that happens, and then we try to take care of it through atonement. Maybe people go to the Ganga, take a dip, so that way they can become free from those sinful reactions. But actually, this kutam, when we take up spiritual life, especially when we start engaging with spiritual sound vibration, then we become aware. Oh my God, where is my mind going? As soon as you start the practice of daily meditation, the first thing one will realize is that my mind has so many such hooks. And in fact, I was hearing the other day, this was a podcast, and they were talking about these neural pathways, that actually our brain has like these certain pathways where we have a certain way in which we tend to react to a particular situation. And that's like, the more we do it, the more those pathways become more solidified. So we want to change that. And that happens through the process of, applying some kind of a spiritual process, which we'll talk about soon enough.
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say if I take example of eating non-vegetarian food. So in some culture, it may be considered as a sinful action, which is, let's say, not permitted or not taken in good way. But if somebody has been born into that family where he or she has been fed that, and somebody else has been born where it has been told that it is sin. So I mean, what's the benchmark? A sinful action may be a allowed action in some culture or in some society. So who draws that line? What is right and what is wrong?
Thank you, Amita. That's a very intelligent question. See, the fact that a person may be born in a family where non-veg food is okay, it again is basically, it was the desire of that living entity to continue with that kind of food. That basically brings that living entity into the womb of those parents, where the person will eat meat right from the very beginning. It's a continuation of that person's aprarabdha karma, which has become prarabdha, manifest as being born into a family where meat eating is promoted right from the very beginning. But the law of nature is that when we harm any living entity unnecessarily, it's not a question of religion. Just like in a country also, if we harm or anybody for our own self-interest, then it's considered a criminal activity. So similarly in the universe, it doesn't matter whether somebody follows a religion or some particular religion, or they don't follow any religion. It doesn't really matter. Religion is for reforming our spiritual nature. So when we harm any living entity, there is a sinful reaction. We are accountable for that. Even when we are walking on the ground and we kill so many insects, there is a reaction to that. Nothing goes unnoticed. So it's not a matter of religion, and whether it's allowed or not allowed in the family, it doesn't matter. The person has to pay the price. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm done.
I was just saying that just by our very existence, we actually, just like you were saying, just by our walking, just by our cooking, just even by eating plants and vegetables. I mean, plants and vegetables also have life. So there is karma involved even in that. That's another thing we're going to talk about soon enough. That's a good, just hold on to that thought. But I was also thinking that, having lived in America for so many years and having spoken to so many people and dealt with so many people, we have seen that, we've seen people who have grown up in a family where, a certain kind of lifestyle was perfectly okay. Like you're bringing out one kind of lifestyle, which is meat eating, but there are so many other such things. But for some reason, right from the very beginning, since the child was 6 or 7, they somehow had a certain other proclivity, right? Their kutam, their disposition, their propensity took them in a completely different direction. So and then I have also seen the opposite, that somebody is born in a very pious family, in a Brahmana family, but their propensity is in a different direction. So birth is a factor, but it is not the ultimate deciding factor. Our own propensities, they determine, what kind of attractions I'm going to have in this life. What am I going to be drawn to? And that's how it works. But there are these different things that actually take us away from our essential nature, and there are certain things that will connect us more deeply with our essential nature. But it's, there's karma everywhere, even in eating plants and vegetables. Also, there is karma.
Nobody is born innocent. Like this is another, I think, a deeper question that you have is, if somebody is born in a meat-eating family, then why they are responsible for? Because they are helplessly being fed that kind of a food, so they should be free from that karma. That's not true. Nobody is born innocent. Every living entity that is born in this material world, they have done enough, and when they are born, they may look like an innocent child, but that innocent child is carrying a whole mountain of karma with them. So nobody is born innocent in this material world.
So should we continue? Because otherwise we won't finish. Come back, yeah. Oh my God, that's a big. Okay.
Maybe we should break it up and then do it in the next session. I don't know what the time is.
No, but I think otherwise we don't have enough. Let's just finish it. Yeah. So
you know these questions anyways.
Yeah, these are like the $1 million questions. Every time, we talk to someone, they'll ask us this question: is it free will? Do I have a free will? Is it all destiny? Or is it God? Who is to be blamed? My happiness or lack of happiness? Are we puppets being manipulated? Do we have freedom? What control do we have?
If you have like the two spectrums, if somebody believes in God, they will say, oh, everything is being done by God. Whatever he desires, it will happen. If he doesn't desire, it will not happen, and things like that. So they put everything on God. Or if they don't believe in God, they say, who's there? I can decide whatever I want to do. There's nothing controlling me. I'm totally free.
So this is also so it is in the world of science. Maybe we can watch this. I don't know, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Newtonian determinism says that the universe is a clock, a gigantic clock that's wound up at the beginning of time, and it's been ticking ever since according to Newton's laws of motion. So what you're going to eat 10 years from now on January 1st has already been fixed. It's already known using Newton's laws of motion. Einstein believed in that. Einstein was a determinist. Does that mean that a murderer, a horrible mass murderer, isn't really guilty of his works because it was already preordained billions of years ago? And Einstein said, well, yeah, in some sense that's true. Even mass murderers were predetermined. But he said they should still be placed in jail. Heisenberg then comes along and proposes the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and says, nonsense. There's uncertainty. You don't know where the electron is. It could be here, here, or many places simultaneously. This, of course, Einstein hated because he said God doesn't play dice with the universe. Well, hey, get used to it. Einstein was wrong. God does play dice. Every time we look at an electron, it moves. There's uncertainty with regards to the position of the electron. So what does that mean for free will? It means in some sense we do have some kind of free will. No one can determine your future events given your past history. There's always the wild card. There's always the possibility of uncertainty in whatever we do. So when I look at myself in a mirror, I say to myself, what I'm looking at is not really me. It looks like me, but it's not really me at all. It's not me today, now. It's me a billionth of a second ago, because it takes a billionth of a second for light to go from me.
Anyways, this concept of free will is being also
we should talk about who this guy is, Michio Kaku. I think he's a neuroscientist, right? He's
No,
a
he's a physicist. He's a physicist. He's a particle
Right.
physicist. Very famous particle physicist. And I think NYU, and he has lot of interesting videos on YouTube and watch.
So I guess the point that we want to make really is that this is a topic, this free will versus destiny, predetermined, this deterministic model versus freedom to choose. This is a topic that is actually discussed, not just in the Bhagavad Gita, but is also being tackled in the world of science
And philosophy.
philosophy. So we can continue.
So the question is, who's responsible? Two things. Responsible for what? Who is responsible for what I'm going through right now? The good and bad things that are happening in my life. Who's responsible for that? And who's responsible for what I'm going to do in the future? So that's $1 million question. So these are the possible choices. People say that I'm the captain of my own fate. There's nobody controlling it. Somebody may say God did it. He's all responsible for it. Somebody may just blame it on circumstances. Somebody may just blame it on the genes. I'm born that way. That's my genetic thing. And there's no way out of it. Some may just blame it on karma. Some may say it's all random. So who's really responsible? So this is an interesting dialogue happening on the same lines between millions of years ago, between this great king Satyavrata, and he asked the fish incarnation, Matsyavatara, this very same deep question that just worded in a different way, which is superior fate or one's own exertion and effort. He says, what is basically and then you can read about it in this link, this whole article, which really explains it very well. What's the balance between our fate or destiny, which is the same as karma. So the fate, destiny, and karma is kind of synonymous in one sense. And our own exertion and effort and free will right now. What's the interplay? So this is a very interesting way to understand this concept, that it's not just one or the other. It's not just fate that drives things in our life. It's not just our own effort that's completely the driver. And other than the two, there is another factor called time. And there are two more coming up. So essentially, we can compare this to the process of growing some crop. So in order to grow the crop, we definitely need our effort, right? If you don't even plant the seeds, nothing is going to happen. So our effort is needed. We plant the seeds, we plow the field, we make an effort. Now, is that enough? It's not, because you may do everything, but then you need something else. You need rains at the right time, If the rains come at the wrong time, like we were in Vrindavan a month ago, and there they said that there were sudden rains in Vrindavan, and there was like all the crops were destroyed. They were about to cut the crops, and the crops were destroyed because of untimely rain. So fate is compared to rain is compared to fate here. That is, fate has a certain outcome for us, and even with our best efforts, whether we will get it or not, that's dependent on fate.
And that is actually why sometimes, you see people working 24 hours and, but somehow, they don't get the sufficient rain. So the plant doesn't fructify. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes people do very little, like, especially if you hear the interviews of very successful people, they say, they can see that there was something else. There was an X factor. So that X factor is our fate, that rain that comes at the right time. And then the third thing, which is time, is actually God. So we talked about the interplay of three things, right? My own effort, destiny, and God. So actually all three have to come together. So if you plan something, and even if the rain comes, the result will only happen in due course of time. You cannot speed it up. So the time actually is a manifestation of the divine hand. So when all three come together, that's when a reaction or something happens in our life. Okay, Usha has raised her hand. So I don't know if this is how much more. I think
You have 2 or 3 more. Let's finish the slides and then we'll take questions.
We'll stay on and answer your questions. Let's continue.
So, and then the free will basically is connected to our effort, right? Only with the free will we choose to do something or not to do something. So destiny, what is destiny? Destiny is the sum total of our karmic reactions from before. What we did in the past, we created a bank balance of reactions that are chasing us. That is destiny, which basically means there's a certain amount of happiness, certain amount of suffering that is coming our way, certain amount of opportunity, certain amount of fame, certain amount of family happiness or distress, whatever it is coming our way. And that is destiny. Now, does it mean that that's all that is there? No. So there is this concept of free will, which basically means that given my karma bank balance, right now, I still have that freedom to choose what I want to do. And that freedom is called free will. And that free will is going to decide what course of action I will take next, and where my life journey will go next, and where my karma bank balance will go next. So in effect, with our free will, we are able to impact the direction of our destiny. We're able to change the destiny.
Like, for example, simple example, you get on a plane to go somewhere, you bought the ticket. Now the plane will land, say in, London or San Francisco. But while on the plane, you will still be making a lot of decisions. How are we going to treat the co-passengers? How are we going to interact with the stewardess? So we still have decisions, and that will determine whether we're going to be thrown off the plane, whether we're going to be arrested when we arrive, or whether we're going to be given an upgrade. Right. So all of that, all those decisions are still something that's going to determine our future life.
Yeah, just like a prisoner, sometimes a prisoner is sent to a prison. We have a very dear friend who was sent to prison for some things. And then you can decide if you behave properly, if you cooperate, if you help others, then your sentence may be mitigated and you will be released soon. And you can utilize the time in the prison and get educated and come out as a really smart person. So it's all our choice. So the person's going to the prison is his destiny. That's his past karma. But how he acts in the prison, that's his free will. And that can change his future outcome and destiny as well. So question about free will. So do I have infinite free will? No, we are tiny sparks of God. We are compared to like these tiny sparks of a fire. So we have minute free will. God has infinite free will. We have minute free will. And therefore, we are always dependent on God. But this tiny free will is also very powerful, because through this free will, we are able to change the course of our life. And also we are able to attract God towards us through this tiny free will.
So here is again a very interesting. I think we are not going to go into too much detail here, but the point that so depending on how we use our free will. So this free will is represented by this rope that ties this calf to the stick. So if we use our free will in a conscious manner, then our freedom will increase. To the extent that we misuse our free will, to that extent the length of the rope will shorten and our freedom will decrease. Kind of like a prisoner who, if he acts up in the prison, he'll be sent into solitary confinement, right? So or if he acts better, then he can be upgraded to a better cell. So in the same way, there are our response to suffering, our response to our karma determines what kind of future lies ahead for us.
Right. So these are various forces which are always acting upon us. We are not free. Our body, mind, and senses, they are acting upon us. Our destiny and karma, that is pushing us in a certain direction in our life. Our environment, our circumstance, which we are put in because of our destiny, because of our past karma, that has an impact on us. Then God's will and divinity, which is represented here, that has an impact on where we'll be going in our life. Our own free will has an impact on where we'll be going. And then there is forces of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. They are continuously surrounding us. They are within us. They are driving us to do certain things. So they have an impact on how we act, what we decide at a particular moment. So there are so many of these forces. So it's not just destiny, which is or God, which is just pushing us in a certain direction. All these forces are acting. But with our free will, we can change the direction of our life. That's the central point to learn here.
I feel that we should pause here and maybe we should continue because this is a lot, and I think we need to take questions. So I don't think we're going to do justice to a karma if we just go through this. So
let's do that tomorrow. Yeah, next session.
Let's grape our way out of karma, because I'm sure a lot of you have questions. Because here is the thing to think about, and this we are going to leave you for the whole week. That there is this whole mountains and mountains of karma that we don't even see. That's actually with us, and there is no way that we can actually get rid of karma other than engaging in a different, we need something else that can come and mitigate that. So we'll talk about all of this next week, and we'll just pause here and just take your questions, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions on this topic. Yes, Jyoti, I know you may have to leave, so I'll give you, you can ask.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, when you're talking about karma, you are talking about good action and bad action generates karma, right? But
good also generates action, reaction.
Okay. No, but I was just wondering, is there really a black and white division between good and bad? Because there is also a gray world where, let me give you a hypothetical situation where, supposing there is a person suffering from a very painful form of cancer, and this person asks the doctor to give her something that would end life. Like, I'm talking about euthanasia here. And the doctor is taking life, but he's taking it for a good purpose, to relieve. On the other hand, the doctor can also say, no, this is your karma. It is better you go through the suffering now. So I'm a little confused, with this thing about karma, because it's not a black and white thing. It's a very gray world. And it's a very complex world from what I've heard so far from both of you, from you and Ms. Loka. It's a very, very complex thing. How does God decide how much karma to load each person with? I'm talking about the bad karma.
Yeah, it's a very good reflection and a good question. And, you're absolutely right that, there are lots and lots of areas which are very gray. How does it work? For example, I talked about the plant life. We may say, okay, animal killing is bad, but so plants also have life. So there is a whole spectrum. There's a whole spectrum where things become more black and white, and then as you move towards the center, there are all these shades of gray. And this is the reason in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the laws and the intricacies of karma are very, very difficult for a normal person to understand. But at the same time, this is where we have to trust superior intelligence. Just like we have some intelligence, the idea is that there is this infinite intelligence, that we refer to as God. And, he is able to, he doesn't just see us right now. See, that's the other thing. We are seeing ourselves in a very thin slice, but he's seeing countless lifetimes before and countless lifetimes that's going to come in the future. So he knows that, how much we are culpable is not something that we can figure out on our own, and neither can anyone. The culpability is completely on the witness who's sitting within the heart. He's the one who decides how culpable we are or how culpable we are not. Even for that matter, when you were saying, depending on your knowledge base, your culpability changes. Like, so for example, if a person is completely ignorant, his punishment for the same act will be different. Versus somebody who is in knowledge, supposed to be a priest or a brahmana, and he's supposed to be teaching the whole world. Now, his culpability is more than someone who is completely without any.
That's right. That's right.
There's a lot of shades. Yeah.
You're right. But I think God must be a very hardworking person to keep his eye on so many people and to decide on the karma. Goodness. It is absolutely mind-boggling when you think of it.
Yeah, this is what it means. I mean, I sometimes think about quantum mechanics. I can't even imagine understanding quantum mechanics, and the greatest scientists, they cannot understand it. But this whole universe is being conducted by so many laws that we are not even aware of. So we are talking about an intelligence which is beyond human comprehension.
No, but even then they exist, and we have to be aware of these things. At least knowing about karma, one can try to be as good as one is possibly aware of how to be,
Exactly.
In that sense. So maybe some karma will get reduced somewhere.
Oh, we'll talk about that. We don't want to just reduce some karma, by the way. Next time, we're going to talk about how to completely eradicate all karma and become karma free. So we'll talk about that.
Would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Leaving any karma behind is like, as Chanakya Pandit says, 3 things that should be taken care of immediately. Fire. If there is a fire in the house, you should take care of it immediately. Don't leave even a little bit of fire behind. Debt. Don't leave any debt behind. If there is a little bit of a debt, it will grow, and then becomes big again. And then the third thing he says, disease. Don't leave any disease behind. Take care of it immediately. If you leave a little bit behind, it will come back and bite you big. So similarly, karma, you don't want to leave anything behind.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Loka.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? We can take it.
I heard Loka said you visited Vrindavan a month ago, and I was thinking about my bad karma that I did not get your darshan.
That was a very quick visit, like for a day or two. It was just in and out. I thought that, but the reason I didn't tell you because it was so hectic, and then it was impossible to fit in anything. So that's why it was hidden. But next time when we come for a little bit of a longer time and we have at least half a day extra or a day extra, then we'll definitely swing by and then spend time with you before going or after coming back. Something we'll figure out.
Yeah, please.
I knew as soon as that came off my mouth. I
Hey, Sam, would you like to share something? Okay.
There was one more thing I was wondering about. I don't know. Does the karma theory apply only to human beings? Because somebody here asked this particular question. What about people who eat non-vegetarian food? But if we look at, the other animals, lions and tigers and all that, it's all the food chain is, it's one thing eating another and another thing eating another. So I guess it's all justified. It's only man who doesn't get eaten. Yeah. And even that, there is cannibalism in certain parts of the world, headhunting and things like that. So that is also happening. So does this karma apply also to other non-human forms?
No, it doesn't. As long as there is, and this, I think Loka mentioned that, it's only in the human form where there is rational thought, where there is we can make a decision, we can be conscious of what we want to do with ourselves. So that's the only place where we have culpability. In the animal kingdom, there's no culpability. They just go there to get rid of that.
In animal kingdom and other species, they are burning their bad karma, basically. That's all they're doing.
Okay.
And then once they burn their bad karma enough, then that soul gets a chance to be born as a human. Therefore, it's said in the Vedas that to get a human form is extremely, extremely rare. And when we get it, we should take it very, very seriously. Not just spend our life just like just not caring about it. We should be very responsible, and it's a gateway basically to get out, to break the cycle of karma and get out of here. That's why it's if you don't use it, if you misuse the human life, then if we fall again into a animal or insect or plant species, then it will take us a very long time again to come back to human form. And
Geeta, you had a question. I'm trying to understand. Sages mostly do good karma. What happens in such a... So we'll talk about this, that what is good. Like, I think we talked about it briefly. Like good karma, the result of good karma is that you will have to take birth again, come back again, maybe be born in the family of Bill Gates or who knows, Trump, maybe. You get born in Donald Trump's family or something.
No.
So there is, good karma is risky. Good karma is very risky. There's a story of that in Srimad Bhagavad Purana, where there was this king. He wanted to feed, like he wanted to give donation to like a lot of sages. So he invited a lot of sages and he gave donation. And then what happened was when he gave cows in donation. So one of the cows actually traveled back to the original herd, and that cow got donated again to another sage. Now, when he found out, like this other sage, he got really upset and he said, he said, my cow the cow that you donated to me has now gone to this other group, to this other Brahmana. So he said, that doesn't matter. I'm really sorry. I can reimburse you. Like I can give you like, I don't know, 100 more cows in response to that one cow. And this Brahmana, he was just very stubborn. He said, no. And then he cursed the king. So good karma is very tricky. When good karma can become bad, it's a matter of one mistake. So we don't want to be caught up in the cycle of good and bad. Ultimately, we want to be out of the cycle of good and bad because it's very, very risky. And like Jyoti said, very gray. It's a gray area. So I guess we'll stop.
Yeah.
Yes, Geeta.
Thanks a lot. I was just curious about one more question about the souls. I just wanted to know, does the number remain constant because every time souls are getting to another body, or do the number ever increase or decrease? Or how do you get out of this rebirth cycle? I know you mentioned about like you get away with karma and then you break this cycle, but I just was curious about number of souls in the universe.
There is no counting the number of souls. Absolutely, there are limitless number of universes, and each universe there are limitless number of souls. So there is no point even trying to count. That question itself is doesn't have an answer basically. Just suffice to say they're unlimited, infinite number of souls, and.
Right, you take a little corner of your house. We don't know how many souls there are, right? Every little insect, every
bacteria.
every bacteria, like it's crazy. It's insane when you start thinking like that. Every living thing, right? That's a spark of life. That's
within our own body. There are countless number of souls, right? We have so many bacteria within our own body, so many different kind of things within our body. They are each little soul, just like us. But somehow, because of their karma, they are being born as a bacteria in somebody else's body.
Our body is not a single family. Our body is actually a multi-family unit. So, thanks, Geeta.
Coming out is that's the topic we'll touch. Because there's no point talking about karma without talking about how to get out of it.
So we'll go into greater detail about karma next time. We'll talk about, while we are going through our prarabdha, how do we react or respond to it? How do you apply this knowledge of karma in our daily life when we're dealing with human suffering? So we'll talk about all of that next time. And thank you very much. We can stop here.
So, Hare Krishna, everybody. So happy to be here with all of you. So as we were talking last time, I think still maybe give a couple more minutes for people to join. So this cycle of karma, how karma works is very complex. And we can just understand that there are different factors that affect our actions. And but by understanding this process and taking responsibility for it, we are better equipped to deal with the reactions to our actions. So the word karma means the actions that we perform in our day-to-day life. It also means the reactions that come from those actions. They are also called karma. In Sanskrit, they are called karma phala, which means the fruits of our actions. But in short, they're also known as karma. So we just wanted to end the last session by talking about What is the way out of karma? Because still the karma is there. We will be stuck in this material world. We have to take another body. So the fact that we have a body means there is some karma. And if there is karma, that means it will definitely lead to more bodies. So thus we came up with this acronym, grape your way out of karma, making it sweet. So the first part is gratitude for what we have received in this life, and seeing this as this is what this is the best thing that should have happened to me. And when we have that heart of gratitude, then we are able to actually move on to the next 4 steps. Because without gratitude, we feel very bitter. We feel, I'm not responsible. Somebody did this to me. With gratitude comes humility and responsibility and all these other things, prayer. So it's the fertile ground from which we can actually rise up and exit this prison of karma.
So I guess I was also thinking that it may seem a little impractical, right? That how can I be grateful in the midst of what may seem like unfair things or bad things happening to me? But it's really an attitude where one starts to first appreciate what one has, and also one starts to see that within that crisis, and we talked about that in our first session, the yoga of crisis, that within every crisis, there is an opportunity for greater joy. And our ability to unpack the crisis holds within it the potential for us to experience the deepest kind of happiness, because if we allow that package of crisis to unpack itself, then we will find that we'll be able to enter into a deeper state of happiness. So that's how one at least acknowledges theoretically, even if one can't feel it, but at least theoretically one starts to acknowledge the fact that there is something there for me, which the universe, which the Supreme Personality is trying to send my way for my growth. And in that way, then one can proceed with whatever difficulty one is dealing with. Go ahead.
Go ahead with the responsibility.
Yeah, so responsibility is also because many times when we are dealing with difficulties in life, we tend to feel very helpless and as if we are just being dragged around and there's nothing we can do. But there is, sometimes people think that the law of karma is kind of callous or kind of, it kind of says that, oh, you're responsible for your own suffering. But actually, it's the other way around. It's actually becoming empowered to take responsibility, to be able to do something, that I'm not just a helpless victim who's being tossed around by some random laws of this universe, but rather I have full freedom and full opportunity to reverse my destiny. And that power actually, we can reclaim that power when we take responsibility for our actions, which means that I say, okay, so these are the cards that I have been dealt with. Now I'm going to take responsibility. I'm not going to allow myself to be dragged down by my mind, which is going to throw all these negative scenarios, but I'm going to take full responsibility and see how I can change that. How can I respond to this situation in the best possible manner so that I can actually experience happiness right now? And also going forward, how can I change the trajectory of my destiny? And the way you do that is by adding a third kind of karma, which we haven't talked about in detail, but we can talk about that right now.
So this concept of akarma is very novel in Bhagavad Gita. It means, in Sanskrit means not, something negated. And karma means actions or the reactions coming from. So akarma literally means, it may seem like not doing anything or not doing any karma, but it's the opposite. It basically means doing our work in such a way that it does not generate any karma. And that was Arjuna's one of the dilemmas, that if I fight, then I will incur sinful reactions because of killing so many people. So that's why I don't want to fight. So Krishna proposed to him this art of akarma. He said, if you fight in this way, this consciousness, then your fighting will not generate any karma. Rather, you will actually become free from whatever karma you have accumulated. So it works both ways. Not only frees us from the accumulated karma that we have, but also there is no future karma generated, karmic reaction generated. And as a result, by engaging in a karma, we are able to wipe out this karmic bank balance, and then we are free. And even in the modern world, many principles from a karma, you see people are adopting that, and they are in corporate life and in their personal life, and they are experiencing great amount of freedom and great amount of impact, and also they're able to make an impact in other people's life. So we'll explore that more in our upcoming session after this slide, what is a karma and how we live a life of a karma.
So actually our next session, by the way, is the yoga of work, karma yoga. So we'll talk about how do we engage with our work, what is our relationship with our work, and that will constitute a huge part. And actually a karma is going to be, part of our discussions throughout. When we talk about the yoga of sound, finally, when we talk about different kinds of yoga systems, a karma is going to be, sprinkled everywhere. And it's a big topic, but we'll continue to, introduce this topic to you and how you can actually become free from the cycle of karmic reaction. And then, of course,
yeah, go ahead and finish the slide.
Yeah, I guess the fourth one is prayer. It's very powerful. It's what, and we'll also teach you how we can actually engage in mantra meditation, which actually forms the core of this akarmic activity, where our consciousness now shifts from being an exploiter and enjoyer to one of in the mood of service. And that happens through the process of prayer, which is very, very powerful, both for healing ourselves as we go through very difficult life situations and suffering. There have been actually studies that have been done to show the power and impact of prayer, both on oneself as well as on people who are far, far away. They actually did a study where they had two groups of people who were both sick in the hospital, and they had random people praying for one group, and the other group they were not prayed for. And they found that actually just by this act of prayer, the group that was actually prayed for, their healing was much faster, and they actually recovered much faster. So, there is a lot documented impact of prayer. And so as we engage in prayer on a daily basis and make that part of our daily life, we will see that our experience of material karma that gets sent to us without our wanting it is going to be completely different. And in fact, this prayer is what will allow us to enter into this attitude of gratitude, because one then will start seeing the bigger forces and the bigger picture. Many times, I'll just give a quick example. When we are, I often see this, like when I'm on a plane and I'm about to fly, I look out of the window and I see that the houses and the trees, they're all huge and they all look so big, right? But as soon as the plane starts to take off, then the trees and the houses, they're still there. But the higher you ascend, the smaller those trees will appear, the smaller those houses will appear. So this is this process of ascending in our consciousness happens through the process of prayer. And the more we engage in that, the more what happens is that we may not be able to change necessarily our external life situation, but our response to it, they will just start shrinking. They'll just start becoming smaller and smaller, and they won't even bother us at some point. So that's prayer.
And I guess exit is keeping our eyes on our goal, which is to exit the cycle of birth and death, exit the cycle of karma. And when we engage in those 4 steps, then it provides us a way out of the cycle of karma. So I guess that leads into our next session, that how should I work in this world so that I don't accumulate any karma and I also become free from any future karma.
I was also thinking that another reason why it's a good idea to always put our eyes on this exit principle is because when we start becoming aware that I'm simply passing through, I'm not here forever. my time here on this earth is very, very temporary. And I know Lokap, sometimes he gives me this example, which I really love, when he used to travel from Banaras, from BHU back to Assam, and how sometimes, he would not have a reservation even, and he would sleep like outside the bathroom or whatever, just put some newspaper. But in his mind, he knew that it was just a short trip. And so all the trouble would not bother him. Rather, he was looking forward to being back home and being fed, whatever he was fed. So the point is that, when we have that idea in our head that I'm only here as a traveler for a very brief period of time, then we are able to look at our karma from a completely different set of eyes. So that's grape. So something for you to take away with you is this idea of grape: gratitude, responsibility, akarma, prayer, and exit to deal with karma. So,
all right, so that ends our session 4. We talked about karma. Why do bad things happen to good people? Different types of karma we discussed. We talked about the concept of free will. Is everything driven by destiny, or do I have any control? And then we talked about how to become free from karma. So now we'll jump into our next session, which is...
But before we jump in, can we just quickly see if anyone has any questions about grape or karma in general? And then we'll get into our next session.
So maybe you will tell in the next session, but is akarma same as karm kiye jao, phal ki chinta mat karo?
Yes, we'll talk about that. Go ahead.
The part of that, yes.
It's part of that, but it's one of the most misunderstood verses of the Bhagavad Gita. If you in India, if you ask somebody, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? They'll say, yeah, just do your work. But actually, there's another dimension to that, and then we'll talk about that. How does work actually become worship? Like sometimes people say, oh, work is worship. But in that case, some of the greatest workaholics in the world are the greatest worshippers. But we know, right, that it doesn't work that way. People, they're just so stressed, and it doesn't seem to lead to any kind of spiritual awakening just by working. So that's why we'll talk about adding that A part of karma and also adding the yoga part of karma so that it becomes worship. And that requires, we'll talk about that. So anybody else? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a question about you mentioned prayer, mantra meditation. Do you guys do mantra meditation that we can participate in? And I think I might have missed when that happens. And
I'm so glad. We just keep waiting for someone to ask this question, because one of the things we've done all these years is that whenever we offer these seminars, alongside, if people are interested, we offer like a daily, like we just come together for 20 minutes and we just, teach you how to meditate. And we do a 21-day mantra meditation challenge that really, really gets you into this practice. So I don't know who's interested, but if you guys are interested, then with this batch also, we can create a sort of a 20-minute or 25-minute session every day. And I can tell you that changes your experience. Like I know sometimes I have questions of how do you get out of this? And that's the way out. Like this is all theory, and then that's the practice that will help this knowledge become solidified. So if you're interested, and I know that some other people also expressed an interest, I guess please just write it down so that we know how many are interested, right? What do you say?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, and we can offer something like that. We already have one session going on at
but I think that's too advanced. I don't think that would work. I think we need to start again, because that's like they're into the deep end. That's how that session, we have multiple sessions going, but you will not be able to connect there. So we would rather that with your batch, we just have a fresh start. And there are people even over here. So if you guys can don't mind just writing on the WhatsApp, you're interested, and the time, like what time zone you are in, so that we can find a good time.
No, I think this would be a good time, like the time that we are offering right now.
Okay.
Starting at 9:30 a.m. and 9:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern, or in India, whatever time it is right now, 7 to 7:30 p.m.
Is that a good time? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just spoke in between. This timing works because I'm from India, so 7 is good time post work and everything.
It is. Okay. So there's Misha, there is Matt. Amitabh saying something that for you later works better. 8:30 p.m. IST. Okay. That's another option that we can keep at 8:30 because maybe there are a lot of people who come back from work and then 8:30, they just kind of end the day with this. Is that, Misha, what do you think?
Yes, that's fine. As long it's 20 minutes, right? 20-25 minutes. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
should
yeah.
be fine.
Give it
Yeah,
short.
So then
We
it's
can-
fine. 8:30 is also good.
8:30 is also good. Matt, does 8:30 work for you? Like that
So
would be
8:30 will be like 11 o'clock for you, Matt.
AM, you're talking?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. That might work. I might not be available, but yeah, we can see how it goes.
What's your time zone, Matt?
Eastern
Eastern.
Standard. I'm in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, what about like half an hour earlier, like 8 o'clock? Would that work for you guys? You just have to
So that will
find
be
it.
10:30. 10:30 for Matt.
That's also late, right?
Yeah, for for me, a little bit earlier is better, like 9:30.
Early is better, right, right, right. What about like morning time? Like our morning, India morning time?
6 a.m. 6 a.m.
Yeah.
India time.
Yeah, 6 a.m. or India time. Is that a good time, Amitabh, for you?
Yeah, I can work it out.
Mornings are the
6 or
best time, huh?
6 or 6:30 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, 6:30 in the morning. I think mornings are the best time, and you'll see the impact.
So
Misha-
6:30 would be what time will be in US?
It'll
9
be evening.
p.m.
9 p.m. EST.
9 p.m. EST. Is that good, Matt and Usha?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that will do for me. The
Perfect.
earlier option wasn't going to do for me. Yeah.
Oh, I love that because that's anyways the time that we are actually engaged in our meditation, our chanting. So we can just come together and we keep it, we just do this together.
Yeah.
So,
That's
okay.
great.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get something together.
And when does that start? You'll be informing
Okay.
via.
We'll inform that. Yeah, we'll just inform that through.
So we'll let you know. Let's jump into our session now.
Okay. Misha, is that too early for you?
If everybody's okay, I'm flexible. It's nothing like that. One can adjust.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, otherwise we'll need a supercomputer to find out the perfect time that matches everybody. And still the computer would fail.
Okay, so yeah, we'll try to keep it short too today, actually, 7:55, that's fine. Let's
I'm just going
continue.
to share some verses from Bhagavad Gita that talk about how we should work. Because working, we all have to do some work. But work has consequences. So this was Arjuna's challenge, and it was 5,000 years ago, but this is the same challenge that we are facing. What to do with work? And so let's look at some of the verses. So Arjuna is saying in chapter 2, text 7, now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So there are many things going on here in this text. One is Arjuna's humility. There is a prayer here also, and a willingness to accept, and also expressing that I don't really know what to do. So this is kind of our situation also, trying to find out what is the best thing for me to do. And the best, this word best is critical here, because most of the time we just think what is best for me in the short term, what is best for my enjoyment, or what is best for my body. But Arjuna is asking overall, what is best for my body, mind, and soul? Everything together. I want something that covers all the bases for me. Then Krishna, this is the first time he starts speaking about becoming free from the bondage of work. He says, thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study, which is, analytical study means helping Arjuna understand the difference between the body and soul, like analysis. That is called Sankhya Yoga. That is understanding difference between body and soul. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. Fruitive results means the karma, basically. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So Krishna puts a lot of emphasis on freeing ourselves from the bondage of works. The bondage of works is also same as karma. Karma has a bondage and it's produced by our work.
Now, this is that famous verse. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. And then he says, perform your duty equipoised, Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga.
So this text 47, Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, is very famous, but is also famously misinterpreted. Means just keep doing your work, or the work is the supreme, and it doesn't really matter how you do your work. Just don't worry about the results. But actually, people are most attached to results. We can never do anything without being attached to results. In fact, we do anything. If we don't see anything, any good results coming out of it, then we'll not do it, right? So it's very theoretical to say that don't worry about your results. They're always worried about your results. So that's why Krishna is, people, most of the time, they don't read the subsequent verses, and they just read this verse and say, just do your work. So here in these verses, Krishna is explaining how to turn your work into worship. Let's see. Yeah, text 50 says, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Yoga karmashu kaushalam. This is what Krishna says. So turning our work into yoga is an art, and we need to learn it properly. So we're not going to read all the verses.
But yeah, I encourage you to read this. And this is a very famous verse again, text 9. Yagyathartha karmano anyatra. It says, work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So how do you perform? So work has to be performed as a form of sacrifice. So we'll talk about all of this in our presentation. Maybe you can jump into our presentation now.
Yeah. So Bhagavad Gita is a lot about action, actually. A big chunk of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna is trying to help Arjuna out of his dilemma, whether to fight or not. And the same dilemma we face in what consciousness we perform our work, how much work we should do, what is a work-life balance. These are problems that everybody is struggling with. Even at work, people are struggling with work-life balance, right? And that concept is becoming more popular now. So let's talk about that. What is the balance between material and spiritual in our life?
Actually, what happens typically is that, most of the times when people think in terms of spiritual life, they think, oh, it means negation of all work. It means giving up all duties, giving up my work. I need to just retire, do nothing with myself. That's actually a path of spiritual life. And that's exactly what Arjuna was thinking. But actually, it's not the case, as we'll see right now. So let's jump into